The police cruiser rolled past at exactly 3:47 in the morning. Wren Calloway pressed herself deeper into the shadows beneath the overpass, her breath trapped in her lungs like something caged and desperate. The headlights swept across the concrete pillars, painting yellow stripes on the graffiti that told stories of everyone who had hidden here before her. All of it washed in that cold, moving light, then returned to darkness as the cruiser passed. She counted to 60, then 60 more. Only when the engine sound faded completely did she allow herself to exhale. 11 years old, 22 months on the streets. And still, every single time she saw those lights, her heart tried to break through her ribs. She could have asked for help. She could have walked up to any police officer, any firefighter, any adult with a kind face and said the words that would change everything. I am alone, I am hungry, I am scared. But Wren had learned what those words bought you. They bought you a system that processed children like products on an assembly line. They bought you foster homes where the checks mattered more than the children who earned them. They bought you group facilities where girls went in with hope and came out with something missing behind their eyes, scraped away by hands that should have been gentle. They bought you a different kind of death, the kind where your body kept breathing, but everything else stopped. So Wren stayed invisible. She moved through Phoenix like smoke, like shadow, like a memory that no one bothered to recall. She slept in different places every night. She ate whatever she could find or earn. She survived. That was all she had left. The morning her mother died had started like any other. March 15th, 2011. The Riverside Shelter for Women and Children. Wren was 9 years old and she had been counting the minutes until morning. Her mother had promised to take her to the library. The library was free. The library was warm. The library had books about places where girls had adventures and parents never left. And the worst thing that happened was a misunderstanding that resolved itself by the final chapter. 2:17 in the morning. The smoke alarm screamed. Wren remembered the hallway filling with black smoke so thick she could not see her own hands. She remembered women shouting, children crying, the emergency lights painting everything in a red strobe that made the smoke look like it was bleeding. She remembered her mother's fingers digging into her shoulders hard enough to leave bruises that lasted for weeks. Bruises she would press in the days that followed pressing, just to feel the pain pressing, because the pain meant her mother's hands had been real. She remembered her mother's voice, the last words Joanna Calloway ever spoke to her daughter. Run, baby, run and don't look back. Wren ran. Down the hallway through the smoke, out into the cold March night, where the air tasted sweet and clean, and nothing like the poison filling her lungs. Her mother did not follow. The fire marshal said Joanna did not suffer. Wren knew that was a lie, but she let the adults believe she believed them. It was easier that way. Adults needed to think they were protecting you. They needed their gentle fictions. Wren gave them that because it cost her nothing. Her father appeared 3 days later, Curtis Calloway, a man built for whiskey bottles and broken promises, not for raising a daughter alone. He signed papers at the emergency shelter. He made assurances. He took Wren's hand with fingers that trembled and said the second most important words of her childhood. We're going to be okay, baby girl. I'm going to take care of you. He tried. In his fractured way, Curtis Calloway tried. 8 months of motel rooms, each one cheaper and dirtier than the last. 8 months of watching her father fight a monster that did not negotiate or offer second chances. A monster that lived inside glass bottles and promised relief but delivered only ruin. 8 months of pretending she did not notice the bottles multiplying in the bathroom trash, the way his hands shook worse each morning, the hollow look in his eyes that said he was already gone, even when he was standing right in front of her. The man who had once been strong enough to carry his daughter on his shoulders through a county fair dissolved like sugar in rain, and what remained could not hold itself together, much less hold a child. November 23rd, 2011, room 17 of the Dusty Trail Motel. Wren woke to find the other bed empty. The sheets were cold. On the nightstand, a $20 bill. Beside it, a note in handwriting that slanted downward as if the words themselves were falling. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. Wren was 10 years old. She read the note 3 times. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket beside her mother's silver locket, the one with the dented clasp and the photograph of a woman and her daughter from before everything broke. She waited 3 days in that room, eating crackers from the vending machine, watching television with the sound turned low. hoping that maybe her father had just gone to find work. Maybe he would come back. Maybe this was not the end. On the third day, the motel manager knocked. A heavy knock. The kind that comes with questions about payment and threats about police. Wren climbed out the bathroom window and disappeared into the Arizona heat. She learned the geography of invisibility, which dumpsters behind which restaurants were emptied on which days, which park benches were safe before midnight, and which ones attracted the kind of attention that left bruises. Which gas station bathrooms could be locked from the inside long enough to wash her face and fill a water bottle before someone knocked. She learned that grocery stores threw away food that was still edible, that car washes sometimes left change in the coin returns, that churches on certain days offered meals with no questions asked, though the volunteers always looked at her too long, always seemed one concerned glance away from picking up a phone. She learned to read adults the way other children read books. The ones who looked through her were safe. The ones who looked at her were dangerous. Not because they wanted to hurt her, but because they wanted to help, and help always came with strings attached. Strings that led to offices with fluorescent lights and files with her name on them, and a system that would swallow her whole. She became a ghost, a rumor, a flicker at the edge of someone's peripheral vision that was gone before they could be certain they had seen anything at all. And through it all, she carried two things: the locket and the note. The last pieces of two people who had failed her in different ways but loved her in the same one. 22 months later, she had $19.37 in her pocket, a fortune by her standards. She had earned it helping a grocery store produce manager unload trucks before dawn. The man had not asked for identification. He had simply looked at Wren's too thin frame and handed her work gloves 3 sizes too large. $19 meant food for a week, maybe new shoes from the thrift store. For a homeless 11-year-old girl in Phoenix, Arizona, this was as close to hope as life ever got. Wren settled against the concrete pillar, watching the occasional car pass overhead on Interstate 17. The August sun would rise in a few hours, bringing temperatures that killed people every summer in this city. Homeless people, forgotten people, people whose names appeared in 3-line news articles that no one read. But for now, the night was almost peaceful. Not comfort, not safety, but familiar, and for Wren, familiar was the closest thing to home she had. She reached into her pocket and touched two things she never let go. Her mother's silver locket, dented and tarnished, but still holding the photograph. Her father's note, folded so many times the creases had worn thin, the ink fading but still readable. Two relics of two people who had loved her and left her. One by fire, one by choice. She was nearly asleep when she heard the motorcycles. The sound started low, like distant thunder on a clear night. Then it grew into a rumble that vibrated through the concrete and into her bones. Wren pressed herself flat against the pillar and watched. They appeared on the highway above like a metal river. 30 motorcycles, maybe more. Chrome glinting under the streetlights, engines roaring in synchronized harmony that sounded almost like music. Behind them, a white minivan struggled to keep pace. Through the rear window, Wren caught a glimpse of small faces. Children. One of them, a little girl with blonde hair and wide eyes, pressed her hand against the glass and looked down. For just a moment, across the distance between two different worlds, their eyes met. The little girl waved. Wren's hand twitched. For a moment, she almost raised it, almost waved back, almost acknowledged that she existed, that she was here, that she was a person who could be seen. Then she caught herself. Invisible people do not wave. Invisible people do not acknowledge. Invisible people survive by being nothing, by being no one, by never letting anyone remember they were there. She watched the convoy disappear, just strangers passing through. Nothing to do with her. She did not know that in less than 4 hours she would see that little girl again. She did not know the child would be hanging upside down in a burning vehicle screaming for help. And she did not know that her hand, the one that had almost waved back, would be the only thing standing between that little girl and death. Above her, far to the north, a man named Virgil Hutchins was fighting to keep his eyes open. He was losing. 23 years of driving trucks, 2 million miles, 0 accidents, a record that would end the moment his eyes closed at 73 miles per hour. The problem was not skill or weather. The problem was $67,000 in medical debt. His wife's liver cancer. Insurance that covered most but not all. So Virgil took extra routes. One hall became two, two became three. Sleep became a luxury ranked below mortgage payments and chemotherapy copays. August 16th, Los Angeles to Albuquerque. 34 hours without rest. August 17th, 2:47 in the morning, 47 miles north of Phoenix. His eyelids began to droop. Just for a second, he told himself. Just rest them for 1 second. 1 second that would cost more than $67,000 could ever measure. The 18-wheeler drifted left. 80,000 pounds of steel and cargo began a slow migration across the center line. 300 yards to the south, Holt Decker was leading his brothers toward catastrophe. He did not know it yet. He was thinking about the letter from the United States Attorney's Office. RICO charges, conspiracy, racketeering, the kind of accusations built from informant testimony that could put him and his senior brothers in federal prison for decades. Holt had learned long ago that truth meant nothing when the government wanted headlines. A motorcycle club president in handcuffs played well on the evening news. His lawyer, Diane Prescott, had been blunt. Iron gray hair pulled back mid-40s eyes that had stared down federal prosecutors without flinching. The jury will walk in believing motorcycle clubs are criminal organizations, she had said. We need something to counter that narrative. Something human. Hence today's ride. Every August, the Stone Ridge Motorcycle Club organized a camping trip for children from the foster care system. Riding for Tomorrow, they called it. This year, Diane had arranged for a reporter from the Arizona Republic to document everything. Photographs of leather-clad bikers roasting marshmallows with orphans might plant seeds of doubt in potential jurors' minds. Holt hated the calculation, but he loved the kids, and if doing something good also happened to be tactically useful, he could live with the mixed motives. The 4 children whose paperwork had cleared were waiting by the minivan. Holt walked over, boots crunching on gravel. Cassidy was 13, dark ponytail, arms crossed like a barricade. Eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. She stood apart from the others, her body language broadcasting a message Holt recognized from countless young people cycling through the system. Come closer, and I will make you regret it. Sawyer and Beckett were 8-year-old twins wearing opposite expressions. Sawyer could not stop talking, words pouring out of him like he was afraid silence would swallow him whole. Beckett had not spoken since they arrived. He stood beside his brother like a shadow that had lost its source. And Tilly was 6. Blonde hair that had not been properly brushed. Blue eyes that held a brightness no amount of neglect had managed to extinguish. Clutched against her chest, a stuffed rabbit with one missing eye and a stitched-up ear. Holt knelt down to her level. His knees protested. 50 years of living had given his joints opinions about sudden altitude changes. Hey there, sweetheart. What's your rabbit's name? Tilly studied him with careful attention. The leather vest, the patches, the tattoos crawling up both arms. Holt waited. Children were better judges of character than adults. They had not yet learned to lie to themselves. Captain Flopsy, he's scared of loud noises. Will you tell Captain Flopsy that motorcycles are friendly loud? Like thunder. Thunder sounds scary, but it's really just the sky saying hello. Tilly considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Then she nodded once. Okay, I'll tell him. Holt stood and leaned close to Briggs, his vice president, who stood beside him, with the easy stillness of a man who had occupied the same position for 2 decades. She reminds me of Ellery, Holt said quietly. The name landed between them like a stone dropped in still water. Ellery, Holt's daughter, his real daughter, the one the system had taken when she was 8 because a judge decided a motorcycle club was no place to raise a child. He had fought for 2 years. Court dates, evaluations, supervised visits in beige rooms where social workers took notes on every word. Parenting classes, anger management, drug tests he passed every time because he had never used. None of it mattered. The system had decided, and the system did not reverse itself for men who wore leather and rode Harleys. Ellery aged out at 18 and disappeared. 21 now, if she was alive. Holt hired investigators, made phone calls, reached out through every connection he had built in 30 years. But Ellery did not want to be found, and a person who does not want to be found in America can vanish as completely as if they had never existed. Every foster kid I look at, Holt said, I see her face. Briggs said nothing. Lost was a country you could not leave, only learn to live in. Holt climbed onto his Harley and raised his fist. 32 engines roared in response. The column began to move. In his side mirror, Holt watched the white minivan fall into formation. Margene Tate was driving, 43 years old, a pediatric nurse who had volunteered for Riding for Tomorrow 3 years running. What Holt did not see was the 18-wheeler 2 miles ahead drifting across the center line. What he did not see was Virgil Hutchins' eyes closing for the last time before everything changed. The rumble strip screamed against the truck's tires. Virgil's eyes snapped open. Too late. The truck was already sideways. 80,000 pounds of steel sliding across both northbound lanes like a wall being lowered from the sky. Tires exploded, metal screamed against pavement. Sparks erupted in a cascade that lit the pre-dawn highway like a welding shop in hell. 400 yards behind, Margene Tate had exactly 4 seconds to react. She saw it in fragments. Jackknife, blocking lanes, no escape, children in back. 4 seconds is not enough time to stop a minivan at 65 miles per hour. Margene did the only thing she could. She yanked the wheel right, aiming for the shoulder. The right tires caught gravel. At highway speed, gravel is ice. The van's rear end broke loose. Margene fought the wheel, overcorrected. The van began to spin. In the back seat, Cassidy grabbed the twins and pulled them against her chest, wrapping her arms around both boys like a human shield. Sawyer screamed. Beckett did not make a sound. Tilly screamed for a mother who had abandoned her in a gas station bathroom 3 years ago. Captain Flopsy fell from her grip as the world turned upside down. The van hit the guardrail at 43 miles per hour. The impact flipped it onto its side. Momentum carried it forward in a shower of sparks. Windows exploded inward, safety glass transforming into 1,000 tiny projectiles. Then the guardrail ended. The van launched into the air. A white metal coffin suspended for one impossible moment against the dark Arizona sky, its occupants weightless and screaming and completely at the mercy of physics and whatever determines whether children live or die on dark highways. It landed on its roof, slid 40 feet across hard-packed desert dirt, and came to rest beneath the overpass where Ren Calloway had been sleeping. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the screaming started. Holt was riding point when he saw the truck jackknife. His reflexes took over before his brain caught up. He squeezed both brakes, dropped 2 gears, and brought his Harley to a stop on the shoulder while the 18-wheeler completed its slide. The truck missed him by 20 feet. Then he saw the minivan, saw it hit the guardrail, saw it flip, saw it disappear over the embankment. No. The word tore from his throat with a force that surprised him. Holt Decker was not a man who lost control. He had given orders in situations that would break most men. He had delivered eulogies for brothers killed in circumstances no family should have to hear about. He had stood in courtrooms while prosecutors called him a criminal and maintained composure that made judges uncomfortable. But those were his children in that van, not by blood, but in every way that mattered. He gunned the engine and raced to the edge. Behind him, 32 brothers followed. The thunder of their engines filled the desert like the sound of an army arriving too late. The scene at the bottom was worse than he had imagined. The minivan lay crumpled on its roof, compressed like a stepped-on aluminum can. Every window shattered, smoke pouring from beneath the hood. Margene hung it upside down in the driver's seat, unconscious, blood dripping from her forehead. But the children were alive. He could hear them screaming. Holt sprinted to the van and dropped to his knees. The first thing he noticed was the heat. The second was the smell. Gasoline. The fuel tank had ruptured liquid pooling beneath the vehicle, spreading across the sand in a dark stain that caught the headlamp light. The fumes triggered every alarm in his body. Fuel plus heat plus time equals fire. Fire plus trapped children equals a nightmare he would carry forever. He grabbed the driver's door handle and pulled. Nothing. The frame had bent on impact, jamming every door shut. He and Briggs pulled together. 450 pounds of combined strength against metal, designed to withstand collisions. The door would not move. The windows, Holt shouted. Get them out, through the windows. But the roof had partially collapsed, creating a space barely 2 feet high. An adult male could not fit through. An adult could not reach the children. An adult could not undo the jammed seatbelts. And the smoke was getting thicker. Holt saw the first flame appear beneath the hood. Small, orange, hungry. It would not stay small for long. Jaws of life, someone shouted. Dispatch said 20 minutes out. 20 minutes. Holt looked at the growing flame, looked at the gasoline spreading across the sand, looked at four children screaming inside a vehicle that was becoming their coffin. They did not have 20 minutes. The gasoline, the heat, the growing flame. The mathematics were simple and horrifying. They had maybe 90 seconds. Holt Decker, president of the Stone Ridge Motorcycle Club, a man who had ridden through storms that could kill, who had faced down threats that would break most men, fell to his knees in the dirt. His hands, the hands that had fixed motorcycles and built furniture and held his daughter's fingers when she was learning to walk, began to shake. For the first time in his adult life, he was completely helpless. Strength meant nothing when the opening was too small. Courage meant nothing when the fire was too close. 30 brothers meant nothing when 4 children were going to burn, because the world had arranged itself into a geometry that excluded every man present. He looked at the faces around him. Briggs' jaw clenched, Stokes' eyes wide. Brothers who had followed him into every kind of danger, now standing useless before a problem that muscles and loyalty could not solve. Some of them were fathers. Some had held their own children in hospital rooms and prayed. All of them understood what was about to happen, and none of them could stop it. And then from the shadows beneath the overpass, a girl appeared, barefoot, filthy, running straight toward the flames. Wren's feet moved before her brain gave permission. One moment she was pressed against the concrete pillar, watching from the safety of shadows. The next she was running, sprinting across the dirt toward a burning vehicle surrounded by giants in leather. Every survival instinct screamed at her to stop. Bikers meant danger. Fire meant death. Being seen meant the system. But the screaming, God, the screaming. It was not adult screaming, not angry shouts or desperate cries. This was higher, purer, more terrified than anything Wren had ever heard. This was children, and somewhere deep in Wren's chest, in a place that 22 months of survival had not managed to kill something, switched off. The calculating part of her brain, the part that weighed risks and kept her alive, simply stopped functioning, overridden by something older and stronger. She saw the blonde hair through the shattered rear window, the little girl who had waved at her. Hanging upside down, screaming flames reflected in her terrified blue eyes. Wren ran faster. Holt saw the girl materialize from nothing. Filthy clothes torn and stained with weeks of street living. Bare feet blackened from Arizona asphalt. Frames so thin he could count ribs through the holes in her shirt. But her eyes were absolutely focused. The look of a person who has identified a problem and eliminated every other thought. Kid, stop. Get back. The girl did not slow down. She ran past Holt, past Briggs, past the wall of helpless bikers, and dropped to her knees beside the shattered rear window. 3 seconds of assessment. Then she moved. Wren had exactly one advantage over every adult at that crash site. She was small. The opening was roughly 18 inches high and 24 inches wide. An adult could not fit. But Wren was 11 years old and had been malnourished for most of those years. Her shoulders were narrow. Her hips were thin. She had spent 2 years squeezing into spaces that should have been too small. Dumpster enclosures, drainage pipes, the gap beneath a loading dock. She knew her body's dimensions the way a pilot knows an aircraft's specifications. She went in head first. The world changed the moment she crossed the threshold. Outside was chaos and noise, and the organized panic of adults confronting their limitations. Inside was something else entirely. A pocket universe of heat and smoke, and the inverted geometry of a world turned upside down. The ceiling was the floor was the ceiling. Seatbelts hung like vines in a jungle made of twisted metal and shattered glass. The heat hit her like opening an oven door. The interior was a furnace. August sun baking metal for hours, now amplified by the approaching fire. Sweat erupted across her body. Her lungs protested as they drew in air that tasted of gasoline and burning plastic. She kept moving. Glass bit into her palms and knees. She ignored it. Pain was information. Information she filed and discarded. The first child she reached was Tilly. The little girl hung upside down from her car seat, blood matting her blonde hair from a cut on her scalp. Her blue eyes were wide with a terror so pure it had moved beyond screaming into a silent, trembling stare. In her arms, somehow still clutched tight, was Captain Flopsy. Please. The word was barely a whisper. Please help us. Wren reached up and found the release button. Jammed. The impact had warped the plastic housing. She pressed harder, putting her entire body weight behind her thumb. Nothing. The flames were closer now, orange light flickering across Tilly's face. She thought about the wave. The moment their eyes met through the van window, this child had acknowledged her, had seen her, had treated her like she existed when the rest of the world had agreed she did not. Click. The harness released. Tilly tumbled free. Wren caught her before she hit the glass-covered ceiling. Can you crawl? Tilly nodded, tears streaming up her forehead in the inverted world. Go out the back window. The people outside will catch you. Don't forget Captain Flopsy. Tilly grabbed the rabbit and began crawling toward the light. Wren turned to the twins. 40 seconds gone. 3 lives remaining. Outside, Holt watched the girl's bare feet disappear into the burning vehicle. Every instinct told him to reach in and drag the kid back. But the opening was too small. His shoulders would not fit. All he could do was wait and pray to a God he had stopped believing in 20 years ago. The first child emerged. Tilly, covered in glass and blood, clutching a one-eyed rabbit. Holt grabbed her and passed her to Briggs, who carried her away from the flames at a dead run. Come on, kid. Get them out. The twins were tangled together inside the van, their seatbelts twisted during the crash into a knot that looked impossible to undo. Sawyer was conscious, eyes locked on Wren with desperate hope. The kind of hope that says you are the last chance. Beckett was not moving. The fire was 10 feet away. A wall of orange and red consuming the engine compartment, reaching toward the passenger cabin with hungry fingers. Smoke filled Wren's lungs with each breath. Her eyes watered. Her throat burned. She found the first release mechanism, jammed like Tilly's, but worse. The metal housing had bent the button at an angle that prevented the latch from engaging. She needed a tool. There, a piece of metal trim torn from the door panel, thin 4 inches wide with a pointed end where it had snapped. The metal was hot enough to burn her palm. She grabbed it anyway. Wedged the point into the gap beside the seatbelt button. Pushed. Levered. Used the physics her father had taught her in another lifetime, when Curtis Calloway still fixed things instead of breaking them. When he would explain how force could be redirected, how the right angle could move the world. Click. Sawyer tumbled free. Go. Window, now. The boy hesitated, looking at his brother. I'll get him. Go. 20 seconds. 2 lives remaining. Beckett's seatbelt mechanism had not just bent, it had partially melted. The soft plastic had fused around the metal components in a way no tool could fix, no leverage could overcome. The button was gone, absorbed into a mass of deformed polymer that looked like candle wax. The fire was 5 feet away. Wren could feel individual flames reaching for her, could see them reflected in Beckett's closed eyes, could hear the hungry sound they made as they consumed everything in their path. She did the only thing she could think of. She started chewing. The seatbelt material was tough, woven nylon designed to withstand thousands of pounds of force engineered to hold a human body in place during the violence of a collision. It was not designed to be cut by the teeth of an 11-year-old girl, but it was still fabric, still threads woven together, still something that could be separated with enough pressure applied at a small enough point. Wren bit down and pulled using her teeth like a saw back and forth, applying pressure that sent pain shooting through her jaw and into her skull. Fibers separated one at a time, achingly slow while the fire crept closer and her lungs screamed for clean air, and the unconscious boy hung above her like a question she refused to leave unanswered. The heat was a physical weight pressing against her. Sweat poured from every pore, evaporating almost instantly in the furnace air. Her vision narrowed, darkness crept in from the edges. Her body was beginning to shut down, beginning to prioritize survival over effort, beginning to tell her that this was over, that she had done enough, that 3 out of 4 was a miracle by any standard. Mom, she thought, I'm not running away this time. I'm running toward. She bit harder. 3 more fibers. 2. 1. The strap gave way. Beckett fell into her arms. 60 pounds of dead weight. She struggled to hold him, to breathe, to see through the tears the smoke forced from her eyes. She began dragging the boy toward the window. 10 seconds. 1 life remaining. Cassidy was still trapped. The oldest of the 4 hung from her seatbelt, blood covering her hands where she had tried to claw herself free. Her dark eyes met Ren's through the smoke. Go. Cassidy's voice was raw but certain. Get him out. Leave me. Ren hesitated. The fire was 3 feet away. The unconscious boy weighed 60 pounds. The window was 8 feet behind her. If she tried to save them both, she might save neither. Go! Cassidy screamed. Don't let him die because of me. Ren made a decision. She dragged Beckett to the window and pushed him through into the waiting hands of the bikers outside. Then she turned around and crawled back into the fire. Outside, Holt Decker watched in disbelief. The girl had already performed miracles. 3 children freed in less than a minute. An unconscious boy pushed to safety, and now she was going back. Going back into smoke and flames in a vehicle that could explode at any second. Kid, no. The words were torn from him, raw and desperate. The girl either could not hear or chose not to listen. She disappeared into the smoke. 5 seconds, 1 life remaining. Ren could barely see. The smoke was so thick that Cassidy was just a shadow illuminated only by the hellish glow of approaching flames. Her lungs were burning. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to escape, to save herself. She kept crawling. I told you to leave, Cassidy said. Steady, angry, the voice of a 13-year-old who had decided her death was acceptable if it meant someone else lived. I did, Ren said, grabbing the girl's seatbelt. Now I'm saving you. Then stop talking and let me work. The button would not depress because the crash angle put continuous pressure on the latch. Ren understood the problem. Push yourself up. Take the weight off of the belt. Cassidy grabbed the seat and pulled, lifting her body just enough to change the angle of force. Click. Cassidy tumbled free. Ren caught her. Window. Now. They crawled together, Cassidy in front, Ren behind. The heat was beyond unbearable. Ren felt her skin beginning to blister, felt her hair singeing, felt the fire reaching for her with fingers made of pure destruction. 3 feet to the window. 2. 1. Cassidy dove through the opening. Ren followed. She was halfway out when the world exploded. The blast wave hit Ren like a giant's fist. One moment she was crawling towards safety. The next she was airborne, flying 15 feet through the air, her shirt catching fire, the breath driven from her lungs in a rush that left no room for screaming. She hit the ground. Her head bounced off hard-packed Arizona dirt. Stars exploded across her vision. I got them out, all 4. I got them out. Somewhere far away, someone was shouting. But the voice was fading. Everything was fading. Holt was moving before the explosion finished blooming. His body reacted while his mind still processed the image of the girl flying through the air like a discarded ragdoll. The kid's shirt was on fire. Not fully engulfed, not yet, but flames licking up the back, spreading toward exposed skin. Holt ripped off his leather vest. The vest he had worn for 23 years. The vest bearing patches earned through blood and loyalty and sacrifice. Each patch told a story. The founding patch from when he was 27 and believed he could change the world. The memorial patches for brothers who had not survived their own battles. The president's patch sewn on by his first wife's hands the night they elected him to lead. 23 years of who he was stitched into leather. He did not hesitate. He threw himself on top of the girl and smothered the flames with leather and body weight. Heat seared through his shirt. Burns formed on his forearms. He pressed harder, rolling the girl beneath him, suffocating the fire with the most precious thing he owned. The flames died. Holt looked at the child in his arms. 70 pounds, maybe less. Bare feet bloody and blistered. Hands covered in cuts from glass and burns from hot metal. Back a mess of second-degree burns. But she was breathing, and behind them 4 children who should have been dead were alive. 4 children who would grow up and have futures because an 11-year-old girl with no shoes and no name had crawled into fire and refused to come out without them. Briggs appeared at Holt's side. His voice cracked. Ray, did that just happen? Did that girl just, yeah. Holt's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, she did. Behind them, the minivan was fully engulfed, a bonfire of twisted metal that had come within seconds of becoming a crematorium. The heat forced everyone back, creating a perimeter of scorched earth around the wreckage. 30 feet away, the 4 children huddled together and into the dirt. Cassidy had her arms wrapped around the twins and Tilly, forming a barrier with her body, even though the danger had passed. even though the fire could not reach them, even though safety was no longer in question. She held on because holding on was the only language she knew, because letting go meant trusting the world to be safe, and she had never been given a reason to believe that. Her dark eyes were fixed on the girl lying in Holt's arms, the dirty barefoot stranger who had crawled into hell to save her life, the stranger who had come back for her when she told her to leave, who had chosen to die with her rather than live without trying. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Holt looked down at the girl, her eyes fluttered open, brown eyes dark and deep, filled with a fear so raw that Holt recognized it immediately. Not fear of the fire, not fear of pain, fear of people. Fear of the world that existed beyond shadows and hiding places. Then she heard the sirens. Her entire body went rigid. The change was instantaneous, like watching a wild animal register the presence of a predator. One moment she was limp and broken. The next she was electric with the desperate energy of a creature that would rather die running than be captured. Before Holt could react, the girl twisted out of his grip and scrambled to her feet. She swayed, nearly collapsed, caught herself on pure willpower. "Kid, wait!" The girl ran, injured, burned, bleeding from a dozen cuts her bare feet, leaving bloody prints on the desert dirt. She ran. Not toward the approaching ambulances, away from them, into the shadows beneath the overpass, into the desert beyond, into the darkness that had been her home for 22 months. Within seconds, she had vanished completely, absorbed by the night as if she had never existed. Holt stood frozen, staring at the empty space where the girl had been, the bloody footprints ending in shadow, the fading sound of bare feet on hard-packed earth. In 30 years of leading men through every kind of crisis, he had never felt this particular kind of helplessness, the helplessness of watching someone who had just saved everything disappear into nothing. "Where did she go?" Briggs' voice was hollow. "She ran. She saved 4 lives, and then she ran from us, from help, from everything. Why would she?" "Because she's scared." Holt turned to face his brother. "She's more scared of us than she was of that fire. She's more scared of what we represent than of burning alive." The words settled over both men like ash. And in that settling, Holt understood something that would not leave him. That girl had run toward fire for strangers, but ran from kindness like it was the most dangerous thing in the world. She had risked death without hesitation, but could not risk being seen. Whatever the world had done to that child, it had taught her that flames were less frightening than people. That knowledge sat in Holt's chest like a stone, and it would not move until he found her. The ambulances arrived, paramedics swarmed the scene, the 4 children were loaded onto stretchers. Margene Tate was stabilized, her injuries serious, but not life-threatening. Statements were taken, measurements recorded, photographs documenting the impossible, and Holt Decker could not stop staring at the shadows. "Ray." Briggs's hand landed on his shoulder. "We need to focus. The kids are safe. Margene's going to make it. This is a miracle. It's not finished." Holt's jaw tightened. "That girl is out there somewhere. Hurt. Alone. She needs help. We don't even know her name. Then we find out." Holt turned to face Briggs fully. His eyes held something his brother had not seen in 20 years of brotherhood. Not anger, not determination, something deeper. "Briggs, that kid did something tonight that grown men couldn't do. She crawled into a burning vehicle without thinking, without hesitating, without any regard for herself. She saved 4 children who would be dead right now if she hadn't appeared from nowhere." Holt's voice hardened into something that sounded like a vow. "I'm not going to let her disappear. I'm not going to let her bleed out in some alley because we were too busy congratulating ourselves to look for her. The feds can wait. The lawyers can wait. Everything can wait." Holt looked back at the darkness that had swallowed the girl. "I'm going to find her. And when I do, I'm going to give her something she's probably never had." Briggs waited. A family. The word hung in the desert air between them. Heavy with promise. Heavy with the weight of a man who had lost 1 daughter and now refused to lose another. The word went out at 7:43 that evening. Holt stood in the parking lot of Phoenix General Hospital, phone pressed to his ear, voice carrying the authority of 3 decades leading men through impossible situations. Behind him, through the glass doors, the 4 children were being treated by doctors who kept shaking their heads in disbelief. They should be dead. Everyone who looked at the crash photographs said the same thing. They were not dead because of a girl who had vanished like smoke. I need every brother we have, Holt said into the phone. Not just Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, Yuma. Everyone within driving distance. Leland Cross, president of the Tucson chapter, was silent for a moment. Ray, we heard about the crash. You're saying a kid did all that? A homeless kid. A girl. Holt's voice tightened. I watched her do it. I watched her crawl into a burning vehicle and pull out 4 children, one by one. Then I watched her disappear before I could thank her. How many men do you need? As many as you can spare. This isn't a hunt, Leland. It's a rescue. That girl is injured. She needs medical attention, and she's terrified of authority. She's going to hide until she can't hide anymore. We'll be there by midnight. By 9 o'clock, word had spread across Arizona and into neighboring states. By midnight, Holt had over 120 bikers assembled in the clubhouse parking lot. 120 men who had dropped everything, left their families, driven through the night to search for a child none of them had ever met. Briggs spread a map across the hood of a pickup truck. I've divided the city into sectors. Each team takes one. We check every overpass, every abandoned building, every place a street kid might hide. She won't go to a hospital, Holt said. Kids like her don't trust institutions. Stokes stepped forward, his voice carrying frustration. Ray, maybe we need to face facts. We've got the feds breathing down our necks. Half our brothers should be with their families, not chasing a ghost. And for what? A homeless kid who doesn't want to be found. The words hung in the air like poison. Holt turned slowly. That homeless kid saved the 4 children. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight that made men step back. 4 children who would be dead right now. 4 children who will grow up and have families because a girl nobody wanted crawled into a fire that grown men couldn't face. He stepped closer. You want to talk about protecting our families? That girl is family now. She became a family the moment she risked her life for our people. And if we abandon her because it's hard or inconvenient, then we don't deserve to call ourselves brothers. Stokes looked away. I'm sorry, Ray. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. Holt looked around at the assembled men. I know everyone's tired. I know we have problems that won't wait. But I also know who we are. We're the ones who show up. We're the ones who stay. We're the ones who fight for people who can't fight for themselves. He paused. That girl is out there dying alone because she thinks the world has nothing to offer her but pain. I'm going to prove her wrong. Anyone who wants to help mount up. Anyone who doesn't go home. No judgment, but I'm not stopping. Silence. Then one by one the men stood up. They got on their bikes and 120 engines roared to life in the darkness. The search began at 12:30 in the morning. 120 motorcycles splitting into teams, spreading across Phoenix like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. The ambulances departed. The fire trucks arrived. The highway patrol began their investigation. And somewhere in the vast, indifferent darkness of the Arizona desert, a girl with burned skin and bloody feet, and a heart that had somehow survived everything the world could throw at it, pressed her mother's locket against her chest and kept running. She did not know that behind her, 120 motorcycles were about to tear Phoenix apart looking for her. She did not know that the man who had smothered her flames was making phone calls that would bring brothers from every corner of the state. She did not know that for the first time in 22 months, she was no longer invisible. Ren ran until her legs gave out. Then she walked. Then she crawled. The pain was everywhere. Her back felt like someone had pressed a hot iron against her skin. Her hands were sticky with blood that was not entirely hers. Her feet screamed with every step as glass worked deeper into the flesh. But she kept moving. The sirens had triggered something deep in her survival brain. Something that overrode pain and exhaustion in the logical part of her mind that knew she needed medical attention. Sirens meant police. Police meant questions. Questions meant the system. She had seen how those bikers looked at her. Gratitude, wonder. Something that might have been respect. But gratitude did not stop adults from making phone calls. Wonder did not prevent social workers from showing up. Respect meant nothing when you were an 11-year-old girl with no identification, no guardian, no proof you existed. Ren had been invisible for 22 months. She intended to stay that way. The abandoned warehouse was 3 miles from the crash site, a distribution center for a furniture company that went bankrupt in 2008. Empty space and broken windows and the kind of silence Ren had learned to love. She collapsed onto her sleeping bag, which was really just a torn blanket she had found behind a shopping mall, and stared at the ceiling. Rust stains spread across corrugated metal like maps of countries that did not exist. Pigeons cooed in the rafters. And for the first time since her mother died, Wren allowed herself to cry. Not from pain, not from fear, from something she could not name. She had saved them. Those four children were alive because of her. The little girl with the rabbit, the twins, the angry one who had told her to leave. They would grow up. They would have futures. They would never know her name. And that was okay. That was enough. Run, baby. Run and don't look back. Her mother's voice echoing across the years. But she had not meant forever, had she? She had meant survive. Make it through the fire. Find something worth stopping for. Wren closed her eyes. Her hand went to her pocket, checking for the two things she never lost. The locket, the note, both still there, both reminding her of who she had been and who she had lost. Maybe someday she would find something worth stopping for. But not today. Today, she just needed to survive one more night. Outside, the sun was rising over Phoenix, and 100 miles of city sprawled between a dying girl and the army of men who had sworn to find her. Someone had seen her. Someone remembered. And someone was coming. The hunt was about to begin. They checked every overpass first. 120 motorcycles split into teams of 4 spreading across Phoenix like blood through veins. North, south, east, west. Every compass point. Every highway interchange where concrete pillars created the kind of sheltered darkness that attracted people who had nowhere else to go. Holt led the northern teams himself. He could not sit in the clubhouse and wait for radio calls. Could not stare at a map while that girl bled out somewhere in the dark. He rode through streets he had known for 30 years, seeing them differently now. Seeing the shadows not as background, but as hiding places. Seeing the abandoned buildings not as blight, but as shelters. Seeing his city through the eyes of an 11-year-old who had learned to become invisible. They talked to the homeless population, the night shift workers at gas stations and convenience stores, the insomniacs walking dogs at 2 in the morning, the security guards making rounds in empty parking lots. Have you seen a girl 11 years old? Skinny, barefoot, burns on her back? The answers were always the same. No, sorry. Haven't seen anyone like that. Hope you find her. One man, a veteran living beneath a highway overpass on the west side, held Holt's gaze for a long time before speaking. Lots of kids out here, brother. More than you think. They learn to be ghosts. You won't find her unless she wants to be found. And kids like that, they never want to be found. Holt thanked the man and rode on, but the word stayed with him. Ghosts. That was what the world had made of its most vulnerable children. Not through malice, but through indifference. Through a system that processed them like paperwork and then lost them in the filing. By dawn, they had covered 60% of the city. By noon, 80%. By evening, nothing. Not a trace, not a whisper. Not a single person in a city of nearly 2 million who had seen a burned, bleeding child stumbling through the streets. Holt stood in the clubhouse parking lot surrounded by exhausted men who had been searching for 18 hours straight. Some had fallen asleep on their bikes' helmets, cradled in their arms like pillows. Others leaned against walls drinking coffee that had stopped having any effect hours ago. She's out there, Holt said to no one and everyone. She's hurt. She can't have gone far. The second night was worse than the first. The adrenaline had burned off, replaced by a bone-deep weariness that made every mile feel like 10. Brothers who had driven from Tucson and Flagstaff were running on fumes and stubbornness. The temperature dropped into the 80s, which sounded comfortable unless you had been riding for 20 hours and your body had forgotten what rest felt like. Holt would not stop. He ate on his bike. He drank water while riding. He checked under bridges and behind strip malls and inside the hollowed-out shells of businesses that had failed during the recession. He showed a photograph of the crash site to anyone who would look. Not a photograph of the girl. They did not have one. Just the burned van, the emergency lights, the impossible evidence of what one child had done. Have you seen a girl 11 years old? Please. She needs help. No. Sorry, no. 3 miles from where Holt was searching, Wren Calloway was dying. She did not know she was dying. Her body knew. Her brain clouded by fever and infection, and 41 hours without sleep had lost the ability to process that kind of information. What she knew was that the warehouse floor was cold against her cheek, that the pigeons in the rafters sounded like her mother humming, that the burns on her back had stopped hurting, which should have been a relief, but instead felt like surrender. The infection had started in the cuts on her hands. Glass and dirt and bacteria, a combination that the human immune system could fight under normal circumstances. But Ren's immune system had been weakened by 22 months of malnutrition, by a body that had been running on insufficient fuel for so long that its defenses had thinned like paper held too close to flame. The burns accelerated everything. Damaged skin could not protect against invasion. The bacteria moved through tissue like fire through dry grass. Her temperature climbed past 102, then 103, then into territory where the brain begins to cook in its own casing. She hallucinated. Her mother sat beside her on the warehouse floor, stroking her hair with cool fingers that smelled like the lavender soap she used to buy from the dollar store. Ren knew it was not real. Some functioning part of her mind held on to that knowledge like a rope over a cliff. But she leaned into the touch anyway. She was so tired of being alone. "I did good, Mom." Ren's lips moved, but she was not certain the sound came out. "I saved them, all four." Her mother's voice, or the memory of it, or the fever's approximation of it, responded with warmth that filled the empty warehouse like sunlight through a window. "I know, baby. I saw. Are you proud of me? I was always proud of you." Ren felt tears on her cheeks, hot against skin that was already burning. She wanted to stay here in this hallucination, in this impossible moment where her mother was alive and close, and the world was not a machine designed to crush children who had done nothing wrong. But the hallucination faded as hallucinations do. The cool fingers dissolved. The lavender scent was replaced by the smell of rust and dust and her own infected wounds. And Ren was alone again on a concrete floor in an empty building, and the pigeons in the rafters did not care. The motorcycle sounds came and went throughout the day. Distant rumbles that grew closer, then faded, then grew closer again. At first, Ren thought it was normal traffic. Phoenix was a city of engines and exhaust and the constant movement of people going somewhere that mattered. But as the hours passed and the rumbling continued, always circling, always probing, always just beyond the edge of her hiding place, a terrible suspicion formed in her fevered mind. They were looking for her. Her brain, unable to process kindness in its current state, produced only one explanation: punishment. She had interfered. She had touched their people without permission. She had inserted herself into a situation that was not hers. Now they wanted to make sure she understood the consequences. It did not matter that she had saved the children. Nothing ever mattered except power and control. Adults took. Adults punished. Adults disappeared you into systems that ground children into dust. She had to move. Had to find somewhere else. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere they could not reach. Ren forced herself to her feet. The warehouse spun around her. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel darkness creeping in from the edges, like ink dropped in water. She grabbed a milk crate to steady herself and felt the plastic crack under her grip. One step, then another. The gap in the fence seemed miles away. She made it halfway across the floor before her legs simply stopped working. Not a dramatic collapse, not a fall, just a cessation. One moment she was vertical, the next she was horizontal, her body making a decision her mind had been too stubborn to make. She lay on the concrete cheek pressed against the cold surface, eyes staring at nothing. The fever had taken hold completely. Her body was shutting down, prioritizing heart and lungs and brain, letting everything else slip away like cargo thrown overboard in a storm. "This is how I die," she thought. Alone in an empty building with nobody to know or care. They would find her eventually. Weeks from now, maybe months. A skeleton in a sleeping bag that was really just a torn blanket. They would not know her name. They would not know she had saved 4 lives. They would file her as unidentified and move on. She thought of her mother, her voice singing lullabies that had no tune but worked anyway because the singing was the point, not the melody. Her arms around Ren during thunderstorms, steady and warm, and absolutely certain that nothing in the world could hurt them as long as they were together. Her hands pushing her daughter toward the exit while smoke filled the hallway behind them. "Run, baby. Run and don't look back." Ren had run. She had survived. And now it was ending anyway. Not in fire like her mother, in silence, in stillness, in the slow, quiet failure of a body that had been asked to carry too much for too long. She closed her eyes. Somewhere outside, an engine rumbled closer, then stopped. Footsteps on concrete, heavy boots on broken glass. A flashlight beam cutting through the darkness of the warehouse like a blade. A voice, rough and familiar, filled with something that sounded impossibly like hope. Over here, I found her. Holt had not planned to check this warehouse. It was not in his assigned sector. It was 3 miles outside the search grid in an industrial area that Briggs had deemed unlikely based on the girl's probable range of travel given her injuries. But Holt had not been following the grid for the last 2 hours. He had been following something else. An instinct. A pull. The kind of irrational certainty that defied explanation but demanded obedience. He had been following Tilly. The 6-year-old girl treated and released from the hospital with minor injuries had been staying at the clubhouse under the care of brothers' wives while the search continued. She could not sleep. She wandered the hallways, clutching Captain Flopsy appearing in doorways, like a small ghost staring at adults with eyes that held a question she could not articulate. Holt found her sitting on the clubhouse steps at 4 in the morning, bare feet on cold concrete, the rabbit pressed against her chest. The night air was still warm, carrying the smell of exhaust and desert dust and the faintest trace of smoke from somewhere far away. "What are you doing up, sweetheart? Captain Flopsy can't sleep." Tilly's voice carried the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old who has decided something is true. He's worried about the girl. Holt sat down beside her. The concrete was hard beneath him, and his knees ached from 2 days in the saddle. What girl? The one who saved us. The one with no shoes. Tilly looked at Holt with eyes that held neither fear nor confusion. Only a child's simple understanding of a simple truth. She's hurt, and nobody's finding her. "Do you know where she might be?" "I saw her before," Tilly said. "From the van. Before the crash, she was under the bridge." Holt's pulse quickened. The bridge on the highway, Tilly nodded. She was sleeping there, against the big posts. She looked at Captain Flopsy as if consulting him, then back at Holt. She was all alone. Nobody was with her. She looked like she lived there. "Which direction, sweetheart?" "Which way was the van going when you saw her?" Tilly pointed south. "That way, where the buildings are. The big buildings with no lights." Holt looked in the direction the child indicated. South of the crash site, industrial zone, warehouses, distribution centers, the kind of area that emptied at 5 o'clock and did not refill until 8 the next morning. The kind of area where a child who knew how to be invisible could disappear into the gaps between buildings like water into sand. The search grid had focused north and east, following the assumption that the girl would move toward populated areas where food and water could be found. But Wren was not moving toward resources. She was moving toward shelter, toward darkness, toward the places where nobody went because nobody had any reason to go there. Holt kissed Tilly's forehead. "You might have just saved a life, sweetheart. You and Captain Flopsy both." Tilly smiled, the first real smile Holt had seen from her since the crash. "Captain Flopsy says you're welcome. He rode south alone. Checked 3 warehouses, found nothing. Checked a 4th, a former furniture distribution center, with a partially collapsed roof and a gap in the chain-link fence just wide enough for a child to squeeze through. He found the gap, found the footprints in the dust beyond it, small, barefoot, smeared with something dark that could have been blood. He followed them inside. The flashlight found her on the floor near the center of the building. Face down, motionless, one arm extended toward the far wall, as if she had been reaching for something when her body gave out. Her shirt, the same ruined shirt from the crash, was stuck to her back, where the burns had wept through the fabric. Her bare feet were swollen and dark with infection. Holt crossed the distance in 5 strides. He dropped to his knees and reached for her neck, with fingers that did not want to steady themselves. Pressed against the pulse point beneath her jaw. For one terrible second, he felt nothing. The universe compressed into a single point of silence and dread. Then, a flutter. Weak, irregular, but present. A heartbeat that refused to stop even when everything around it had. "Over here," Holt said into the radio. His voice broke and he did not care who heard it. "I found her, South Industrial District, the old Mercer Furniture Building on 7th. Get an ambulance here now. She's alive, but barely. She's burning up." He rolled her gently onto her side, careful of the burns. Her eyes fluttered but did not open. Her skin was radiating heat that Holt could feel through his gloves. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, the panting rhythm of a body fighting a war it was losing. Holt pulled off his jacket and covered her. Not for warmth, for comfort, for the simple human need to be covered, to be protected, to not lie exposed and vulnerable on a cold floor in an empty building. He sat beside her and waited for the ambulance. And while he waited, he talked. Not because she could hear him, not because words could fix what was broken, but because he had spent 2 days searching for this child, and now that he had found her, he could not bear the silence. "Hey kid, it's me, the guy from the highway, the one with the vest. Well, the vest is pretty much ruined now, but that's okay, it was getting old anyway." Her breathing did not change, but her fingers twitched. "You did something incredible out there. Something I've never seen in my whole life. You saved those kids. All four of them. They're safe now in the hospital getting better. The little one, Tilly, she's the one who helped me find you. Told me she saw you under the bridge before the crash." Another twitch, stronger this time. Wren's eyelids flickered. Her eyes opened, brown and unfocused and burning with fever. For a moment there was no recognition, just fear. The primal animal fear of a creature that has been cornered. Then the fear shifted, became confusion, became something Holt could not identify. "Why?" Wren's voice was a whisper scraped across sandpaper. "Why are you here?" Holt looked at her. This child who had survived 22 months alone, who had run into fire for strangers, who had run from help because help had never been anything but a trap. "Because you saved my children," he said, "and little girls who save the world deserve someone to save them." Something broke inside Wren's chest. Something that had been frozen for 2 years, locked away behind walls she had built to survive. She did not have the strength to run anymore, did not have the strength to fight, did not have the strength to maintain the invisible armor that had kept her alive, but had also kept her alone. She had one word left. She gave it to the stranger kneeling beside her in the dust. "Okay." Her eyes closed. Holt gathered her up, careful of the burns, careful of the cuts, careful of everything about this small person who weighed almost nothing and had carried almost everything. He held her the way a father holds a daughter, and he refused to let go until the paramedics arrived. The hospital room was white and quiet, and nothing like anywhere Wren had slept in 2 years. She woke slowly, consciousness rising through layers of fog like a diver ascending from deep water. The first thing she noticed was the absence of pain. Not gone entirely, but dulled, wrapped in something soft that kept the sharp edges from cutting too deep. Medication, the kind that cost money she did not have. The second thing she noticed was the ceiling, clean, no rust stains, no water damage, no pigeons, just white acoustic tiles with tiny holes arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Wren stared at those patterns for a long time. She was afraid to look anywhere else. "Hey," the voice came from her right, soft, careful, the voice of someone trying not to startle a wounded animal. Wren turned her head. Holt Decker sat in a chair beside the bed. Same weathered face, same eyes that had watched her crawl into the burning van. But something was different now. The hardness she had seen at the crash site had softened into something that looked almost like tenderness. "How are you feeling?" Wren's throat was dry. She tried to speak and produced only a croak. Holt reached for a cup of water on the bedside table and angled the straw toward her lips. Every instinct screamed at Wren to refuse, but she was so thirsty. She drank. The water was cold and clean and tasted like nothing she had experienced in 22 months. Holt refilled it without being asked. "The doctors say you were severely dehydrated," Holt said. "Infected burns, cuts that needed stitches, malnutrition." He paused, choosing his next words with the care of a man walking through a minefield. "They say you've been on your own for a long time." Wren said nothing. Her eyes moved to the door, calculating distance, evaluating obstacles, counting steps to the exit. The arithmetic of escape that had kept her alive for 22 months running in the background of her mind like software she could not uninstall. "Nobody's called social services," Holt said quietly. The words were deliberate. Each one placed like a brick in a bridge he was trying to build across a chasm he could not see the bottom of. "Nobody's filed any reports. As far as the hospital knows, you're my niece visiting from Nevada. I'm your legal guardian." Wren's eyes snapped to his face. The calculation stopped. For the first time since she woke up, she looked at him with something other than survival mathematics. You lied. I did. Holt was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of personal experience, the kind that leaves scars you can feel but not see. Because I've seen what the system does to kids like you. The foster homes that collect checks and forget to buy food. The group facilities where children go in and never come out the same. He met her eyes with a directness that left no room for doubt. You've survived on your own for almost 2 years. You've learned to be invisible. I wasn't going to take that from you. Not after what you did. Nobody had ever protected her before. Not since her mother. Not since the night that ended with smoke and running and a voice that said, "Don't look back." Wren reached under her hospital gown and found the locket. Still there. The nurses had not removed it. She pulled it out and held it in her bandaged palm, the silver chain pooling like liquid in the gauze. "What's that?" Holt asked. Wren hesitated. Then she opened it. Inside the photograph, a woman with dark hair and a smile that made you believe the world might be decent after all. A little girl on her lap, maybe 4 years old, laughing at something beyond the frame. My mom and me. Before. Holt looked at the photograph for a long time. His expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A recognition, a kinship, the shared understanding of people who carry their losses in small objects because the losses themselves are too large to hold. "She's beautiful," he said. "You look like her." Wren closed the locket. From her pocket, folded into a square no bigger than a postage stamp, she produced the note. She did not open it. She did not need to. She knew the words by heart. "My dad wrote this the day he left." She held it out to Holt, not to give to him, to show him, to let him see what she carried and why. Holt read the words through the worn paper. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." His jaw tightened, but he did not judge, did not condemn, did not say the things adults usually said about fathers who abandon their children. He just nodded. And Wren understood that this man knew something about failure, about the distance between wanting to be enough and actual being enough, about the specific kind of love that destroys the person who cannot sustain it. "What do you want?" The question came out harder than she intended, sharpened by years of learning that nothing was free. People don't help for no reason. "What do you want from me?" Holt did not flinch. "I want to offer you a choice. What choice? You can leave right now. I'll give you money, clothes, whatever you need. Nobody will stop you, or you can stay. You can let us help you. You can become part of something, part of what a family." The word hit Wren like a physical blow. Family. She had a family once, a mother who sang lullabies, a father who tried and failed and eventually disappeared. Family meant loss. Family meant pain. Family meant trusting someone and watching them leave. "I don't have family." "You could." Why? Wren's voice cracked. "Why would you want me? I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless kid who happened to be under a bridge when your van crashed." Holt stood and walked to the window. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old grief. "I had a daughter, Ellery. She was 8 when they took her from me. Said I was unfit, said the motorcycle club was dangerous for a child." He gripped the windowsill. "They put her in foster care. I fought for 2 years, court dates, evaluations, everything they asked. But the system decided I wasn't good enough." He turned to face Wren. "Ellery aged out 3 years ago, 18 years old and suddenly on her own. I tried to find her, hired investigators, called everyone I knew. She didn't want to be found. Last I heard, she was in California somewhere. Maybe alive. Maybe not. I don't know." Tears glistened in his eyes. "I can't change what happened to Ellery, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to you. I'm not your daughter." "No, you're not. You're something else. You're a girl who saw 4 children about to die and ran toward the fire instead of away from it. You're a girl who has every reason to hate the world, but still chose to save strangers." His hand rested on her shoulder, gentle and warm. "That kind of courage doesn't come from nowhere, Wren. It comes from something inside you that refuses to go out no matter how hard life tries to extinguish it. I want to protect that. I want to give it room to grow." Wren stared at him. 22 months of survival instincts screamed at her to refuse, to disappear, to become invisible again. But there was another voice now, quieter. Her mother's voice. "Run, baby. Run and don't look back. But Joanna Calloway had not meant forever. She had meant survive. Make it through the fire. Find something worth stopping for. I'm scared, Wren whispered. I know. What if you leave? What if you disappear like everyone else? Then I'll be the biggest disappointment of your life, and you'll have every right to hate me. Holt did not look away. But I'm not going to leave. I'm going to be here every single day until you believe me. I don't know how to trust people anymore. Then don't trust me. Not yet. Trust takes time. Holt squeezed her shoulder. Just stay. Give us a chance. Give yourself a chance. Wren looked at the door, then at Holt, then at her own hands bandaged and healing the hands that had pulled 4 children from a burning vehicle. She thought about Tilly and Captain Flopsy, about the twins, about Cassidy who had told her to leave. She thought about running, and for the first time in 2 years, she thought about stopping. Okay, Wren said. Okay, I'll try. 3 days later, on the morning Wren was scheduled to be discharged, 3 black SUVs pulled into the hospital parking lot. Men in dark suits emerged with coordinated movements that spoke of rehearsal and authority. Wren watched from her window. Something cold settled in her stomach, spreading outward like the gasoline she had crawled through 3 days ago. Holt was beside her bed reviewing discharge papers. He looked up at her expression, then followed her gaze to the parking lot. His jaw tightened. Stay here. No matter what happens, stay in this room. Who are they? People who want to ask questions were not ready to answer. Holt walked to the door. Briggs was already there, having come up from the lobby. They spoke in low voices. Then Holt left. Wren sat in the hospital bed, her heart pounding. She knew this feeling, the trapped animal awareness that danger was close and exits were limited. She looked at the door. The window was too high. The door was the only way out. And beyond that door were men with badges and authority and the power to make her disappear into the system she had spent 2 years avoiding. Agent Nathan Mercer stood in the hospital corridor. Tall, silver hair, eyes like granite, credentials in hand. Behind him, 2 agents flanked the doorway like bookends made of federal authority. Mr. Decker, we need to discuss the incident on Interstate 17. Holt stood with arms crossed, blocking the doorway to Wren's room. We already gave statements to the highway patrol. We have additional questions, specifically about the minor who was involved. Witnesses report a child entered the burning vehicle and extracted 4 other minors. Mercer's voice was smooth and practiced. While the Bureau investigates trafficking networks in Arizona, children on the streets are often victims. We want to ensure this child is safe. The words sounded reasonable. Carefully constructed sentences designed to sound like concern. Holt heard the machinery beneath them. I don't know what you're talking about. There was no child, just my brothers responding to a terrible accident. That's not what witnesses say. Witnesses were in shock. Mercer's smile tightened, the expression of a man who was accustomed to cooperation and found resistance both surprising and inconvenient. Mr. Decker, obstruction of a federal investigation carries serious penalties. If you're harboring a minor without legal guardianship, I'm not harboring anyone. Then you won't mind if we look around. It was not a question, but Holt treated it as one. You got a warrant? We're requesting cooperation. Request denied. Come back with paper or don't come back at all. The standoff lasted 7 seconds that felt like 7 years. 2 men locked in the kind of contest that has no middle ground and no compromise. Holt brought an immovable in the doorway, his body filling the frame the way it had filled doorways for 30 years. Mercer silver and precise in the corridor, carrying the weight of a federal badge and the grief of a dead son and the absolute conviction that he was right. Neither blinked, neither yielded. The air between them hummed with the tension of 2 opposing forces meeting on ground that neither would surrender. Then Mercer nodded, a single controlled movement, the concession of a man who has decided to retreat but wants it understood that retreat is not defeat. You're making a mistake, Mr. Decker. We'll be back, and when we return, we'll have everything we need. He paused at the elevator, his voice changed, dropped the smooth, professional tone and replaced it with something rawer, something personal. One more thing. One more. The United States Attorney has been building a RICO case against your organization for months. Conspiracy, racketeering, the kind of charges that put men away for decades. Mercer's eyes found Holt's and held them. It would be a shame if your unwillingness to cooperate influenced how aggressively those charges are pursued. A real shame. The threat was not subtle. It was not meant to be. It was a sledgehammer wrapped in the thinnest tissue of bureaucratic language, and both men knew exactly what it meant. Give us the girl, or we take everything. The elevator doors closed. Holt stood motionless, staring at the empty corridor. Then he turned and walked back into Wren's room. She was already packing. The clean shirt, the sweatpants, the shoes the hospital had given her. Her hands were shaking. You heard, Holt said. I heard. Wren did not look at him. I need to leave. Before they come back. Before they use me to destroy everything you've built. Wren, I'm serious. If I stay, your brothers go to prison. Everything you've built disappears. She shook her head. I won't let that happen. Not because of me. Holt stepped inside and closed the door. Sit down. Something in his voice broke no argument. Wren sat. Holt pulled up a chair. Let me tell you something about that federal agent. He's been circling this club for 3 years. The RICO case was being built long before you crawled into that van. Whether you stay or go, they're going to do what they're going to do. The difference is this. He leaned forward. If you stay, you won't face whatever comes alone. And neither will we. They'll take me away. Put me in the system. Then we'll fight. Every brother, every lawyer we can hire, every resource we have. He gripped her shoulder. You're one of us now. We don't abandon family. Wren felt tears break free. Tears she had held back for 2 years behind walls built from necessity and reinforced by pain. I'm not worth it. I'm not worth destroying everything you've built. You're worth more than you know. Holt's voice cracked. You're worth more than buildings and bikes and legal battles. You're worth fighting for. You've always been worth fighting for. You just never had anyone willing to do it. Wren stared at him. 22 months of running, 22 months of hiding, 22 months of believing that her survival depended on never being seen, never being known, never allowing anyone close enough to matter. And now a man she had known for 3 days was offering to tear down everything he had built rather than let her face the world alone. She could run. The instinct was there, coiled in her muscles, ready to fire. The window was too high, but the door was right there. And she was fast, and she knew the streets, and she could disappear before anyone could stop her. But Wren was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being invisible in a world that had proven in one explosive moment on a dark highway that she was anything but. She had run into a burning vehicle for 4 strangers. She had chewed through a seatbelt with her teeth. She had crawled back into fire after being told to leave. She had done all of that without hesitation, without calculation, without the survival instincts that had governed her life for 22 months. And now those same instincts were telling her to run from kindness, to flee from the first person who had ever fought for her, to choose invisibility over belonging, because belonging meant risk and risk meant loss. No. The word formed in her chest before it reached her mouth. Quiet at first, then louder. No, I'm done running. Holt waited. I've been running for 2 years, from everything, from everyone, and I'm tired. Wren looked at him with eyes that had aged decades beyond their 11 years. That FBI agent wants to use me. Fine. Let him try. But I'm not going to run from him, and I'm not going to let you fight alone. She straightened in the hospital bed, and Holt saw something change in her, the hunted look, the cornered animal tension that had defined every interaction since they found her in the warehouse shifted, replaced by something harder, something that looked like decision, like the moment on the highway when she had stopped calculating and started running toward fire. He wants me to be afraid. Wren's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been since she woke up in this room. He thinks because I'm a kid, because I'm nobody, I'll disappear if he pushes hard enough. That's what everyone thinks about kids like me, that we'll just go away if you scare us enough. She looked at her bandaged hands. But I didn't disappear when that van was burning. I didn't go away when those kids were screaming. And I'm not going to go away now. I want to talk to your lawyer, Wren said. Holt blinked. My lawyer, the woman. The one with the gray hair. I have an idea. Diane Prescott arrived within the hour. Briefcase, sharp eyes, the expression of someone who had been expecting a problem and found something far more interesting. Wren sat up in bed and spoke with a clarity that surprised every adult in the room. That agent wants me to be invisible. He wants me to be a secret he can use as leverage. So we do the opposite. We make me the most visible person in Arizona. Diane's eyebrows rose. Go on. You tell my story. All of it. The fire, the rescue, the homeless girl who saved 4 children while 30 grown men stood watching. You put it on the news. Every channel, every paper, every website. You make me so famous that the federal government can't touch me without looking like they're attacking a child who risked her life to save other children. Wren paused, her eyes brown and serious and far too old for her face moved between the two adults. He thinks I'm a pawn. Something small he can move it around a board to get what he wants. She shook her head slowly. I'm not a pawn. I'm the story. And once the story is out there, once everyone knows what happened, he can't use me anymore. I'm not leverage. I'm a headline. And you can't threaten a headline. The room was silent for a long moment. Diane looked at Holt. Holt looked at Wren. Wren looked at both of them with the steady gaze of someone who had survived things that would have broken most adults and had come out the other side with an understanding of power that no 11-year-old should possess. She understood because she had lived in the spaces between power. She had been the thing that powerful people step over without seeing. And she knew with the certainty of someone who has been invisible exactly what visibility was worth. She's right, Diane said quietly. She turned to Holt with something that might have been admiration. Your girl just designed a better legal strategy than anything I had. The campaign began that evening. Diane contacted the Arizona Republic reporter who had been scheduled to cover the camping trip. The story had changed. It had become something larger, something that touched every nerve in the American consciousness. A homeless child, a burning vehicle, 4 lives saved by the smallest person at the scene, a motorcycle club that tore a city apart searching for one girl. The reporter, a veteran named Patricia Callahan, who had covered Arizona politics for 20 years and thought she had lost the capacity for surprise, listened to the story and asked Diane to repeat it. Then she asked to meet Wren. The interview lasted 2 hours. Wren spoke quietly but without hesitation. She told Callahan about the fire at the shelter, about her father's note, about 22 months of sleeping under bridges and eating from dumpsters, and learning that the worst thing you could do in America was ask for help. Callahan, who had 2 daughters of her own and had not cried during an interview since her first year in journalism, excused herself twice to compose herself in the hallway. The headline ran on September 3rd. Barefoot hero, homeless girl saves 4 children from burning wreck. The photograph showed Wren standing between Holt and Cassidy Burns, still visible on her arms, eyes looking directly into the camera with an expression that was both vulnerable and fierce. The expression of someone who had nothing left to lose and had discovered in that freedom a courage that people with everything could not match. By noon, every major outlet in the state had picked it up. By evening, it was national. CNN ran a 3-minute segment during prime time. Fox News followed, emphasizing community organizations stepping up where government had failed. The internet exploded. Hashtag Barefoot Hero. Hashtag Wren Calloway. People who had never met her posted messages of support, shared the article, demanded to know how they could help. Within 72 hours, Wren Calloway had become the most famous child in America. And Agent Nathan Mercer had a problem. He sat in his Phoenix office staring at a television, showing yet another anchor praising the courage of a homeless girl and the motorcycle club that had taken her in. His coffee had gone cold. His strategy had crumbled. The RACO case is suspended indefinitely, the assistant director told him through the speakerphone. Stand down, find another target. This one's radioactive. The line went dead. Mercer stared at the phone, then at the television where Wren's face filled the screen. Brown hair, serious eyes, the kind of face that made people want to protect her. An 11-year-old girl had just defeated the Federal Bureau of Investigation by being brave. He pulled open his desk drawer, inside a photograph in a simple frame. A young man, 19, wearing a football uniform. Bright smile. Michael Mercer, his son. 6 years ago, Michael had been outside a bar in Tucson. Wrong place, wrong time. 2 motorcycle clubs in a dispute that turned violent. Gunfire. Michael caught in the crossfire, killed by a stray bullet from a prospect who did not even know what he was shooting at. Mercer had turned his grief into a crusade. All motorcycle clubs. All of them. It did not matter which one. They were all the same to a man whose son was still dead. The Rico case against the Stone Ridge had been his obsession, his way of making sense of loss that had no sense in it. Now it was over. And in the wreckage, Mercer was forced to confront something he had been avoiding for 6 years. Not all motorcycle clubs were what killed his son. Not all men in leather were criminals. And this girl, this brave, broken girl, had found a family in a place he had spent 3 years trying to destroy. He thought about the look in Ren's eyes during the news segment. Not triumphant, not defiant, just steady. The eyes of someone who had decided to stop running and was prepared to face whatever came next. He had seen that look once before. In Michael's eyes the night before his son left for college. The look of someone stepping into a future they could not control, but refused to fear. Mercer closed the drawer, put Michael's photograph away, made a decision he should have made years ago. He could not face Holt, could not apologize, could not undo the damage his grief had caused, but he could stop. He could walk away. He could choose to let his son's death be a tragedy instead of a weapon. It was the least he could do. And somewhere he hoped Michael would understand that his father had finally learned the difference between justice and vengeance. That sometimes the bravest thing a man could do was not to fight harder but to stop fighting altogether. The adoption hearing was scheduled for October 15th. Diane Prescott worked miracles with paperwork the way other people worked miracles with prayer. Quietly, relentlessly, with a faith and process that bordered on the religious. Ren's birth certificate was located in Nevada, filed under a slightly different spelling from when her mother had been running from Ren's grandfather years before. A man Ren had never met and did not want to. The birth certificate listed Ren's full name as Ren Elaine Calloway. The middle name was her mother's first name. Ren had not known that until Diane showed her the document. She stared at it for a long time. Her mother's name carried inside her own like a seed waiting for soil. The death certificate was harder to find. Joanna Calloway had died in a fire at a women's shelter, and the paperwork had been filed by a county clerk who misspelled everything and then retired 3 months later. Diane tracked the original through 4 offices across 2 states, making phone calls with the patient ferocity of someone who understood that bureaucracy was not an obstacle, but a language, and she spoke it fluently. Curtis Calloway's abandonment was documented through motel records in a police report filed by the Dusty Trails manager 6 days after Ren disappeared through the bathroom window. The report described a child left unattended. It did not describe a father who had tried for 8 months and failed. It did not describe a man drowning in a bottle. It described a situation in the flat, bloodless language of law enforcement, and Diane used that language to build a case that no judge could deny. The courtroom was packed on the morning of October 15th. Brothers filled the gallery. Leather vests creating a sea of patches in loyalty that stretched from the front row to the back wall. The bailiff had looked nervous when the first wave arrived. By the time the 5th wave came through the doors, he had stopped trying to manage the crowd and simply pointed toward the remaining seats with the resigned efficiency of a man who recognized an unstoppable force. Reporters occupied the back rows. Cameras were prohibited inside the courtroom, but notebooks were ready and pens were moving before the judge even entered. The barefoot hero story had legs that would not stop running, and every editor in Arizona wanted the next chapter. Cassidy sat in the front row. The weeks since the crash had softened her edges without dulling them. She had been placed with a foster family in Scottsdale that actually cared, one of the rare ones, and the anger that had defined her at 13 had evolved into something more useful. Purpose, direction. The beginning of a person who would spend her life making sure other children did not fall through the cracks she had fallen through. Beside her sat Sawyer and Beckett. The twins had been adopted together by a couple in Tempe who had waited 7 years for children and received 2 at once and considered themselves the luckiest people alive. Sawyer still talked too much. Beckett had started talking again 3 months after the crash, his first word in the therapist's office, a single syllable that made his new parents weep. Home. And Tilly, 6 years old when the van crashed, 7 now sitting in the front row, with Captain Flopsy on her lap wearing a dress with flowers on it and shoes that actually fit. She had been taken in by Margene Tate, the nurse who had been driving the van that night. Margene, who had recovered from her injuries and could not bear the thought of Tilly entering the same system that had failed her before, had filed for guardianship the week she was released from the hospital. 4 children saved from fire, all of them present, all of them whole, all of them watching as the girl who had crawled into hell for them prepared to receive something she had never had. Wren sat at a table beside Diane, Holt on her other side. She wore a dress that Diane had bought for her. Simple navy blue, the first dress Wren had worn in over 2 years. It felt strange against her skin, constricting, like wearing someone else's life. But when she looked down at it, she did not see a costume. She saw a choice. The choice to stop hiding, the choice to be seen. Judge Elaine Whitfield entered the courtroom. Everyone rose. The judge was 53, silver hair cut short, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. 23 years on the family court bench had given her a reputation for fairness that was exceeded only by her reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Be seated. She reviewed the papers before her with the careful attention of someone who understood that every document on her desk represented a human life. We're here to consider the petition for legal guardianship filed by Holt Decker on behalf of Wren Calloway. She looked at Holt over her reading glasses. Mr. Decker, you understand that guardianship carries significant responsibilities. Yes, Your Honor. You'll be responsible for this child's education, health care, and welfare until she reaches majority. Yes, Your Honor. This responsibility cannot be abandoned without court approval. I understand. Holt paused. And I'd like to say something if the court allows. The judge nodded. Holt stood. He was not a man accustomed to public speaking. He was accustomed to giving orders on open roads and making decisions in moments that did not allow for speeches. But he had practiced these words, had written them on a napkin at 3 in the morning, and read them to Briggs, who had listened without interrupting, and then said simply, "That's the truth, Ray. The truth is enough, Your Honor. 2 months ago, I watched this girl crawl into a burning vehicle to save 4 children. She didn't know them. She didn't owe them anything. She had every reason to stay hidden, every reason to protect herself, every reason to let someone else handle it." His voice filled the courtroom. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady the way a river is steady. But she didn't stay hidden. She ran toward the fire. She risked everything for strangers. And when it was over, when 4 children were alive because of her, she ran away. Not from danger, from us, from help. Because the world had taught her that help was just another word for trap. Holt looked down at Wren. His eyes glistened, but his voice held. That's who Wren Calloway is. Not because someone taught her. Not because she expected a reward, but because somewhere inside her, there's a light that refuses to go out no matter how hard the world tries to extinguish it. He turned back to the judge. I've made mistakes in my life. Done things I'm not proud of. I lost a daughter to the system because I wasn't good enough, and I've carried that failure every day since. But I've also built something. A family, a brotherhood, a community that looks out for people who can't look out for themselves. Holt's voice cracked. Just once, he let it. I want to give Wren that family. I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of the trust she's placing in me, and I want to prove to her and to this court that the system that failed my daughter doesn't have to fail this one. Silence filled the courtroom. The kind of silence that is not empty, but full of held breath and unshed tears and the accumulated weight of every person in the room remembering a moment when they needed someone to fight for them. Judge Whitfield looked at Wren. Young lady, do you have anything to say? Wren stood. Her legs were shaking. She could feel them trembling beneath the navy dress, and she pressed her palms flat against the table to steady herself. She had prepared a statement. Diane had helped her write it. Proper sentences, legal language, the kind of words that courts expected from people seeking favorable outcomes. But standing there looking at the judge at Holt, at the brothers who had searched for her and fought for her and treated her like she mattered when nobody else in the world had bothered, the prepared words felt wrong. They felt like a costume, like the dress, like something designed to make her look like what adults wanted to see instead of what she was. So she told the truth. My mom used to tell me that family isn't about blood. Wren's voice was small at first, thin as paper. Then it grew steadied, found its footing the way she had found her footing crawling through a burning van. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself. She paused. The courtroom was absolutely still. For 2 years, nobody showed up. Nobody stayed. Nobody fought. I lived under bridges and behind shopping malls and inside buildings where pigeons were the only other living things. I ate whatever I could find. I slept wherever I could hide. And every single day, I told myself the same thing. You are alone. You will always be alone. The world does not have room for you. Her eyes found Holt. Then I met this man, and he showed up. He stayed. He fought. Not because he had to, not because anyone made him, because he chose to. Wren turned to the judge. Her voice broke and she let it. Some things should not be said with a steady voice. Some things deserve the crack. I choose him too. I choose this family. I choose to belong somewhere for the first time since my mom died. Please, please let me stay. Silence. 3 heartbeats. Judge Whitfield removed her glasses. She wiped her eyes with a gesture that was neither ashamed nor hidden. She replaced the glasses, picked up her gavel, and spoke. In 23 years on the bench, I have never heard more compelling testimony. The petition for legal guardianship is granted. Mr. Decker, congratulations. You have a daughter. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted. Brothers surged to their feet, cheers drowning out the bailiff's attempts to restore order. The sound was enormous. A wall of voices that shook the windows and rattled the light fixtures and carried through the courthouse walls into the parking lot where more brothers waited beside their bikes. And when they heard the cheering, they added their own until the entire block vibrated with a joy that had no precedent in the history of Maricopa County Family Court. Diane Prescott closed her briefcase with the satisfied click of someone who had won cases before, but never one that mattered this much. She looked at Wren and allowed herself a smile that was neither professional nor restrained. Cassidy threw her arms around Wren with a force that nearly knocked them both off their feet. Sawyer and Beckett piled on from either side, creating a collision of limbs and laughter that the bailiff watched with the expression of a man who had given up entirely on maintaining decorum. Tilly pressed Captain Flopsy into Wren's hands with the solemnity of a knight surrendering a sword. He wants to live with you now. You need him more than me. Wren looked down at the one-eyed rabbit, the stitched ear, the matted fur that had been through a van crash and an explosion, and the hands of a 6-year-old who held on tight because holding on was all she knew how to do. Are you sure? Tilly nodded with the absolute certainty that only 6-year-olds possess. Captain Flopsy says you're his family now. He told me. Wren held the rabbit against her chest the way Tilly had held it on the night everything changed. And she understood that this was not a gift. It was a transfer. Tilly was passing along the one thing that had kept her safe because she believed Wren needed it more. This was what family meant. Not blood, not paperwork, not legal proceedings and gavels and signatures on dotted lines. Family was a 6-year-old girl giving away her most precious possession because she trusted someone enough to let go. And Holt, the president of the Stone Ridge Motorcycle Club, who had ridden through storms and faced down federal agents and buried brothers and lost a daughter and spent 30 years building a life from the raw materials of loyalty and grit, gathered Wren into his arms and wept. Not the quiet tears of a man maintaining composure. The full shaking, undone weeping of a man who had carried a weight for so long that setting it down felt like a second kind of gravity. Welcome home, daughter, Wren held on. The word came out broken and whole at the same time. 2 syllables that she had not spoken since she was 9 years old, standing in a smoke-filled hallway while her mother pushed her toward the exit. Daddy. Holt's arms tightened. Neither of them let go for a very long time. The letter arrived 6 weeks later. It came to the hospital, forwarded twice before it found its way to the clubhouse, and then to Wren's room, the room that had been Holt's home office before he cleared it out and filled it with a bed and a desk and bookshelves that he built with his own hands because Wren had told him she loved to read and he wanted her to have a place for every book she would ever own. The envelope had no return address. The handwriting slanted downward and Wren recognized it before she opened the seal. The same slant, the same tremor, the same hand that had written 6 words on motel stationery 2 years ago. She sat on her bed and held the envelope for a long time. Then she opened it. The letter was short, written on lined paper torn from a notebook. The words were unsteady. Some letters retraced multiple times as if the hand that wrote them kept stopping and starting fighting itself with every sentence. Wren, I saw you on the television. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was another girl with the same name. But then they showed your picture and I knew. I knew because you have your mother's eyes and your mother's courage and everything good about you came from her. I don't deserve to write this letter. I know that. I left you in a motel room with $20 and a note because I was too weak to stay and too broken to help. I told myself I was protecting you, that you would be better off without a father who couldn't stop drinking, that leaving was the kindest thing I could do. That was a lie. The kindest thing would have been to stay and fight, to get help, to be the father you deserved instead of the one I was. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I'm writing because I want you to know my thing I should have told you every day for the past 2 years. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I was afraid that my failure would kill you, that watching me destroy myself would destroy you too. I was wrong. You are stronger than anything I could have done to you, stronger than fire, stronger than everything. I'm sorry, Ren, for all of it. Your father. Ren read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully the way she folded important things. She did not cry. She had done her crying. What she felt now was something different, something quieter. Not forgiveness, not yet. Forgiveness was a country she could see on the horizon but had not reached. What she felt was understanding. The recognition that her father had been drowning and that drowning people sometimes push away the ones they love most because the alternative is pulling them under. She placed the letter on her nightstand beside the locket and the note. 3 objects from 2 parents. A photograph of love before it broke. A confession of surrender. And now an explanation that was not an excuse but was perhaps a beginning. She did not write back. She was not ready. Maybe she would never be ready. Or maybe someday, on some ordinary afternoon when the light was right and her heart was steady, she would sit down and write 2 words on a piece of paper and mail them to an address she did not have. I'm okay, not I forgive you, not I understand. Just I'm okay. Because that was what Curtis Calloway needed to hear more than anything else. That his failure had not destroyed her. That the $20 bill in the bathroom window and the 22 months of bridges and dumpsters had not been the end of the story. That his daughter had survived, had thrived, had become something that neither of her parents could have imagined. But that letter would come later, or it would not come at all. And either way, Ren would be all right, because she had learned something in the years since that motel room. She had learned that forgiveness was not a debt you owed to the person who hurt you. It was a door you opened for yourself when you were ready to let the weight pass through. She kept the letter, and keeping it was its own kind of answer. 5 years later, Ren Calloway Decker stood in the parking lot of the Phoenix Fire Academy on a morning in June 2018. The Arizona sun was already brutal at 8 o'clock. Her dress uniform was crisp and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. She was 16 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, nothing like the barefoot skeleton who had crawled into a burning minivan 5 summers ago. Today she was graduating from the Junior Firefighter Program, a 2-year course preparing young people for careers in emergency services. Ren had finished first in her class. The irony was not lost on her. A girl who had lost her mother to fire. A girl who had nearly died in fire herself. A girl who still woke sometimes in darkness, smelling smoke that was not there, feeling heat that existed only in memory. That girl had chosen to spend her life running toward flames. Holt called it courage. Cassidy called it stubbornness. Ren called it simple. She never wanted another child to feel what she had felt. Trapped, terrified, certain that no one was coming. She would be the one who came, always. Then she heard it, the rumble. Low at first like distant thunder, then louder. A sound that vibrated in her chest and brought tears to her eyes before she saw the source. Motorcycles. They appeared at the end of the street like a metal river, chrome glinting in morning sun engines, roaring in perfect synchronization. The Phoenix chapter came first. Holt at the head gray beard, longer now ease, carrying the wisdom of 5 more years of leadership. Briggs rode beside him. Behind them came every brother she had grown to love. Stokes and Martinez and Big Pete and dozens more. But they were not alone. Tucson had sent 30 riders. Flagstaff sent 25. Chapters from across Arizona and beyond. New Mexico, Nevada, California, Colorado. 167 motorcycles. 167 brothers. All of them here for her. Ren's vision blurred. Holt dismounted and walked toward her. Boots crunching on gravel. Face split by a grin that took years off his weathered features. Thought you might want some family at your graduation. Ren tried to respond. The words would not come. Holt pulled her into a hug the same way he had 5 years ago, in a dusty warehouse. The same way he had 1,000 times since. I'm proud of you, he whispered. So damn proud, Ren girl. Thanks, Daddy. The words still felt like a miracle every time she said it. The ceremony was held in the Academy's main auditorium. Ren sat with her fellow graduates, 23 young men and women in matching uniforms carrying matching certificates. They had spent 2 years learning skills that might one day save lives: how to read smoke, how to force a door, how to carry a person twice your weight down a staircase that might not hold, how to breathe inside a mask while your body screamed for air, how to make decisions in seconds that would be analyzed for months. But only one of them had 167 bikers occupying the entire back section, their leather vests creating a wall of patches that made the fire chief do a visible double take and then a slow appreciating nod. The speeches were standard graduation fare: dreams and futures, hard work and dedication, the sacred responsibility of running toward danger while others flee. Ren listened and felt each word settle into her like stones into stone, water finding their place among the things she already knew. Then the chief called her name. Ren Calloway Decker, top of her class. Outstanding achievement in physical training, emergency medical response, and fire behavior analysis. The chief paused and looked at his notes with a smile that said he had been waiting to deliver this particular line. Ren also holds the distinction of being the only junior firefighter in our program's history to have already saved 4 lives before her first day of training. Warm laughter rippled through the auditorium. The Decker Award for Exceptional Courage is presented annually to the graduate who best exemplifies sacrifice, bravery, and service. This year, the selection was unanimous. Ren walked to the stage. The chief shook her hand. The auditorium erupted, but it was the sound from the back she heard most clearly. 167 voices raised in a cheer that shook the walls. She looked out at them, at Holt, tears streaming down his face, at Briggs pumping his fist, at Cassidy, now 18, sitting in the front row with Sawyer and Beckett and Tilly, the 4 children she had saved, who had become her siblings in every way that mattered. Ren leaned into the microphone. 5 years ago, I was invisible. The auditorium went silent. I lived under bridges and in abandoned buildings. I ate from dumpsters. I had no family, no future, no hope. Her voice steadied. Then I heard children screaming, and something happened that I still don't fully understand. I stopped being invisible. I stopped thinking about myself. I just moved. She paused. But here's what I've learned since. What happened on that highway wasn't special because of what I did. It was special because of what happened after. A man named Holt Decker decided a homeless girl was worth searching for. 100 brothers decided I was worth protecting. A family chose me when no one else would. She held up the plaque. This award has my name on it, but it belongs to everyone who showed up for me, everyone who stayed, everyone who fought. She looked directly at Holt. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't about blood. Thank you for proving that little girls who run toward fire deserve someone to run toward them. Thank you for every Sunday dinner and every phone call and every time you said, I'm proud of you, and meant it in a way I could feel in my bones. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. And thank you, Mom. Wherever you are, I finally understand what you meant. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause was deafening, a sound that filled the auditorium like a physical force pressing against the walls and the ceiling and the hearts of everyone who heard it. But in her mind, Ren heard something else, quieter, closer, her mother's voice. Run, baby, run and don't look back. And she understood at last. Joanna Calloway had not meant run away. She had meant run forward, run toward life, run toward love, run toward the fire, because that is where people need you most. Run until you find the place where running stops being escape and starts being purpose. Run until the running itself becomes the thing that saves you. Ren had run. Through smoke and shadow and 22 months of darkness and 5 years of healing and a lifetime of learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the stubborn, beautiful refusal to let fear make your choices for you. And she was still running. Toward the fire. Toward the people who needed her. Toward the life her mother had died to give her. The That evening, Cassidy found Wren on the clubhouse roof looking at stars. Missing your party. Still not my party. The award literally has your name on it. Wren smiled. Okay, maybe a little bit my party. They sat in comfortable silence. The city spread below them. Phoenix, the place that had almost killed Wren. The place that had saved her. I got accepted, Cassidy said. Arizona State. Full scholarship. Social work program. Cassidy, that's amazing. Turns out surviving the foster system is useful experience for a career in child welfare. She smiled, but something bittersweet lived in the expression. Feels weird, though, leaving. Wren understood. The clubhouse had become home for both of them. The idea of stepping outside its protection felt like jumping off a cliff. You know what Dad told me when I was scared to start the program? What he said, the whole point of having a family is to give you the strength to leave them. Real love doesn't hold you back. It pushes you forward. Wren reached over and took Cassidy's hand. These people didn't save us so we could hide here forever. They saved us so we could go out and save others. When did you get so wise? Must be the company I keep. Below them, Holt appeared in the parking lot. He looked up, spotted them, raised his hand in a wave. Wren waved back. No hesitation, no calculation, no measuring whether it was safe to be seen. Invisible girls don't wave. But Wren Decker was not invisible anymore. The program started 6 months after the adoption. Holt and Wren designed it together at the kitchen table, sketching ideas on napkins, the way Holt sketched everything in broad strokes that left room for details to fill themselves in. Phoenix Rising, a partnership between the motorcycle club and the state foster care system. Mentorship and support for children aging out with nowhere to go. The same children who became homeless at 18. The same children who filled underpasses and abandoned buildings. The same children Wren had been. The name was Wren's idea. Phoenix. The city that had almost killed her. The mythical bird that burned and was reborn from its own ashes. The word that meant both the place and the process. Destruction and renewal. Death and resurrection. The end of one story and the beginning of another. It started small. 3 kids in the first year, 7 in the second, 12 in the third, each one matched with a brother or a brother's family who provided what the system could not. Stability, patience. The simple, radical act of showing up every single day and proving that adults could be trusted, that promises could be kept. That family was not a word on a form, but a verb, an action, a choice made fresh each morning. Some of the kids thrived immediately. Others fought it, pushed back against every kindness with the suspicion of people who had been burned before and expected to be burned again. Wren understood them better than anyone. She sat with the difficult ones, the ones who broke things and stole things and said terrible things to the people trying to help them. She sat with them and said nothing for as long as it took. And eventually, when they were ready, she told them her story. The bridge, the fire, the running, the stopping. You don't have to trust anyone today, she would say. You just have to stay. By 2018, Phoenix Rising had helped 78 young people find housing, employment, and hope. The model spread. Tucson launched their version. Then Flagstaff. Then chapters in New Mexico and Nevada. Independent clubs who heard about the program and wanted to replicate it. Across the Southwest, motorcycle clubs, once viewed with suspicion, were becoming lifelines for forgotten children. All because one girl crawled into a burning van. All because one man refused to let that girl disappear. All because family was a choice and they had chosen each other. 10 years later, 2028, the newspaper clippings were framed on the wall of Fire Station 7 in downtown Phoenix. 3 articles spanning 15 years. Barefoot hero, homeless girl, saves 4 children from burning wreck. The photograph of an 11-year-old dirty and thin standing between a gray-bearded biker and a dark-haired teenager. Phoenix Rising program celebrates 200th graduate. Founder Wren Decker credits the family who chose me. Fire Captain Wren Decker, 26, receives Medal of Valor. The woman in the newest photograph was different from the girl in the first. Tall, strong, wearing a captain's uniform. But her eyes were the same. Still focused, still determined, still running toward the fire. The call came in at 2:17 in the afternoon. Wren noted the time without thinking. 2:17. The same time the smoke alarm had screamed in the Riverside shelter 17 years ago. the same minute that had divided her life into before and after. She did not believe in coincidence, but she believed in patterns, and this one wrapped itself around her chest like a hand. Structure fire, East Side residential neighborhood. Possible child trapped inside. Second floor. Wren's crew moved with practiced efficiency. Hoses deployed, water on the flames, two firefighters breaching the front door. But Wren was already assessing, already calculating the way she had calculated every problem since she was old enough to understand that problems were the only constant in life. The stairs would be compromised, the heat intense, the structural integrity of the second floor questionable at best. Time was a currency being spent faster than it could be earned. A woman stood on the front lawn, held back by a neighbor, her eyes wild with the particular terror of a parent who has been separated from their child by something stronger than human will. My daughter, my baby, she's inside. Second floor. Please, please. Wren met the woman's eyes for 1 second of contact that communicated everything words could not. I know, I understand, I'm going. Captain, one of her crew called. Witnesses say there's a girl, 7 years old. Second floor bedroom. Back of the house. Wren did not hesitate. I'm going in. Martinez, you're with me. They breached the door. Smoke thick as night. Heat like a furnace. Wren kept low, felt her way forward, every sense heightened. She had done this 100 times in training and 50 times in real situations. It never got easier. Every fire was different. Every second mattered. The stairs groaned under their weight. She tested each step, made it to the second floor. The hallway was an inferno. Flames on the walls, ceilings starting to collapse. Fire department, call out. A faint voice from behind a closed door. Help, please. Wren kicked the door open. Inside, a girl huddled under the bed. 7 years old. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Clutching a stuffed animal. For a moment, just a moment, Wren was 11 years old again. Crawling into an overturned van. Reaching for a little girl named Tilly, who held a rabbit and whispered, please. Hey, sweetheart. Wren knelt down. I'm Wren. I'm going to get you out of here. The girl looked at her with eyes too wide for her face. I'm scared. I know. Wren reached out her hand. I'm scared too. Every single time. Being scared is okay. It means you're brave enough to keep going, even when you're afraid. The girl took her hand. Wren pulled her out from under the bed and picked her up. 60 pounds. So small, so fragile. She thought about her mother. About running toward the exit while fire consumed everything behind them. About a woman who gave her life so her daughter could live. Hold tight. Hold tight to me and your friend there. What's your friend's name, Mr. Patches? Wren smiled behind her mask. Mr. Patches is lucky to have you. She carried the girl through the hallway, Martinez clearing a path, through smoke and heat and flames that reached for them, down the stairs, through the first floor, out the front door into sunlight and air and life. The mother ran to her daughter, fell to her knees, pulled the child into her arms. The sound she made was not a word. It was something older than language. The sound of a person who has almost lost everything and gotten it back. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wren watched them hold each other, mother and daughter, clinging with the desperate intensity of people who understood now how fragile everything was, how quickly fire could take it all away. And she heard it, not with her ears, somewhere deeper, her mother's voice, not the command from that terrible night, something different, something that sounded like pride. That's my girl. Wren smiled, turned back to her crew. There was still work to do, the fire to extinguish, the scene to secure. But for this moment, she allowed herself to feel what she had earned. That night, Holt sat on the clubhouse steps, same steps where he had sat with Wren 10 years ago, the night after the search ended and the real journey began. Same view of the parking lot, chrome and steel gleaming under streetlights. Same stars overhead, the same constellations that had watched them build something from nothing. But everything had changed. The man on the steps was older, the beard fully white now. The hands that had smothered flames on a child's back bore the permanent scars of that night, pink and smooth patches of skin that he touched, sometimes without realizing it the way a person touches a talisman. His phone rang. Hey, Daddy. The words still made his heart swell. Every single time, after 10 years, after 1,000 phone calls. The miracle of being called father by a person who had chosen you. Hey, Wren girl, how was your shift? Saved a little girl today, 7 years old, blonde hair, reminded me of Tilly. You okay? More than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. A pause, the kind of pause that carries weight. The kind that exists between people who have said the important things so many times that saying them again is both unnecessary and essential. Daddy, yeah, thank you. For that night, for searching, for not giving up on me, for all of it. Holt closed his eyes. The stars burned behind his eyelids. Thank you for letting me find you. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, daughter. The line went quiet, not disconnected, just comfortable silence. The kind that exists between people who have earned each other's trust through years of showing up and staying and choosing each other when choosing was hard and continuing to choose when choosing was easy and never once, not for a single day, forgetting what it had cost to build this thing they shared. Wren hung up first. Holt sat there, phone in hand, looking at the stars, thinking about Ellery, the daughter he had lost to a system that judged him by his vest instead of his heart. Thinking about Wren, the daughter he had found in the ashes of someone else's catastrophe. Thinking about 200 young people that Phoenix Rising had helped find their way home. Thinking about the thousands more who would come year after year, drawn by the simple promise that someone would show up for them. All from one moment. One girl running toward fire. One man refusing to let her disappear. Briggs joined him on the steps. Old friends sitting together in the darkness, the way they had sat together in every kind of weather for 30 years. You good? Ray Holt nodded. That girl we pulled from the warehouse 15 years ago. Briggs waited. She's out there right now pulling other kids from fires, saving lives, making a difference. And someday one of those kids she saves will grow up and save someone else. And on and on. He looked at Briggs. We didn't just save one life that day. We started something that's going to keep going long after we're gone. Briggs grinned. Damn right we did. They sat in comfortable silence. Brotherhood, family, legacy, the things that mattered, the things that lasted. Inside her apartment that night, Wren turned off the light and lay down. The apartment was small, clean. Hers. Not the clubhouse, though she still went there every Sunday for dinner. Not the overpass or the warehouse or the motel room, where a 10-year-old girl had read a note and waited 3 days for a father who was never coming back. This was home, earned, chosen, built one day at a time from the materials of a life that had once seemed impossible. On the nightstand, 3 things: the locket, the note, the letter. She picked up the locket, opened it, looked at her mother's face, young, beautiful, full of hope for a future that would never come. I understand now, Mom, what you meant when you told me to run. She closed the locket, picked up the note, read her father's words one final time. Then she picked up the letter. The explanation that was not an excuse. The apology that could not undo what had been done, but could perhaps close the wound enough for scar tissue to form. I forgive you, Dad, she said it to the empty room, to the man who had tried and failed, to the man who had left because he believed his failure was contagious and his love was not enough. I forgive you, and I hope wherever you are you found peace. She placed all 3 objects together on the nightstand. The locket, the note, the letter. Past, present, and the fragile beginning of something that might someday become future. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in 15 years, Wren Calloway Decker fell asleep without fear, without nightmares, without the weight of wondering if anyone would come, because someone had come. Someone had searched. Someone had fought. And in doing so, Holt Decker had not just saved one life. He had started a legacy that would outlive them both. Outside Phoenix slept under a blanket of stars. Somewhere a fire burned. Somewhere a child needed help. Somewhere someone was making the choice to run toward danger instead of away from it. And tomorrow Wren would be there, ready, willing, able, forever running toward the fire. Forever proving that love was stronger than fear. Forever showing the world that family was not something you were born into. It was something you chose. Every single day. The station alarm rang at dawn. Wren Decker, fire captain, set down her coffee and headed for the truck. Another fire, another chance, another opportunity to honor the mother who had pushed her toward life and the father who had pulled her back from the edge, and the family who had proven that love was not a thing you were given. It was a thing you built. From ashes, from wreckage, from the raw, stubborn, beautiful refusal to let the fire win. Wren climbed into the truck. The engine roared to life. The sirens began their song, and once again she ran toward the flames. On the wall of Station 7, beside the framed newspaper clippings and the photographs in the Medal of Valor, a quote was written in Wren's own handwriting. Every firefighter who passed it knew the words by heart. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who runs toward the fire when everyone else runs away. Below it, added later in a shake your hand, 4 words written by a man with a white beard and tears in his eyes and a leather vest that still bore the scorch marks from the night he smothered the flames on his daughter's back. That's my girl.